ADO.NET correlates to the system.data namespace. This namespace provides a set of object libraries to consume data from a variety of sources, such as files, databases, message stores, and even objects. Visual Studio 2005 introduced a great deal of new data access features, from programmatic elements such as controls and class libraries to designer features such as tools and wizards. Visual Studio 2008 takes ADO.NET even further with introducing links as an efficient data manipulation language. In this chapter, we'll work with setting up data connectivity, and then we'll use the ADO.NET object model to work with the item data in our inventory. Let's first begin with understanding the history of data access, which led us to the ADO.NET object model and its benefits. Starting from the top on this chart, you can see that we've broken this down into 3 different layers: application for any user interface features, the .NET framework itself for your data access, and then your actual data layer, the repository for where your data is stored. In the past, you would have used ODBC, DAO, RDO, and classic ADO for data access. As data access models evolved, OLADB, ODBC, and JDBC introduced universal data models for accessing your data. The goal then was to only have one data provider to work with a variety of different data sources. By providing a common denominator between all your data sources, you'd be able to switch out the data source on the fly without having to worry about your data provider. So, for example, if you wanted to go from Oracle to SQL Server, you could still use ODBC or OLADB as your data access driver. This is no longer the case with ADO.NET. In theory, although universal data providers did make sense, in practicality, no one would really flip out their database on the fly. So instead, ADO.NET introduced a managed data provider model. This means there's a data provider to work specifically with Oracle, one for SQL, so that the data provider can actually take full advantage of what one database offers versus another. That way, the Oracle Client Data Provider is fully optimized for working specifically with Oracle. Likewise, SQL Client for SQL Server. Instead of having a common denominator, which basically flushes out the nuances and differences between databases, instead, a managed provider can take full advantage of what that database offers. So starting from your client, whether it's a desktop application or a browser application, you'd be able to use the .NET framework to target your data. ADO.NET primarily resides in the system.data namespace. Optionally, you can choose to use Lynx as a scripting language to manipulate your data. Behind the scenes, Lynx actually uses the ADO.NET classes in order to access data. And OLADB still exists in order to support any databases that don't specifically have a managed provider for them. You can use OLADB to access the mainframe or any other semi-structured data such as message stores like email or a document repository. Remember, behind the scenes, OLADB will use COM in order to access that data. So you're actually adding yet another layer of abstraction, going from .NET into COM. So as much as possible, as a best practice, use a .NET managed data provider that's specific for the database you're working with.